Hello and welcome to Where You're Not Entertained. I'm Daniel.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm James.
And we're going to be talking about the trial of the Chicago 7, which has actually been nominated for quite a few awards during this award season.
Yep.
Apparently 147 nominations, that's a lot.
It's a good chunk.
And has got a Golden Globe and 37 other wins. So 38 out of 147. I feel like that's a pretty good ratio too.
Yeah, it was nominated for 5 Golden Globes and it won for Best Screenplay.
Yeah, there you go. And something.
And was this a straight to Netflix?
This is a Netflix original.
Yep.
Okay, so
yes.
that's pretty awesome, man. I mean, Netflix is
what they do, right?
Well, they've touched their toes in awards for a few years now, but I mean, a movie, I felt like the production value on this was higher than most of the movies that are produced by Netflix. They have some really good production value sometimes, but this was exceptional. This is really good.
I think that they pick the ones that they think can be award movies.
Well, and I also think production-wise, this was a little bit different because this wasn't like an action movie. So maybe budgeting and production of something like this that's a little I don't want to say
CGI
static necessarily, but yeah, something that's not as much fast movement or big choreographed things. Maybe they have a little bit better handle on that.
Yeah, the most expensive thing they're spending on this outside of like cast, crew, and fees is like old cars.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, an outstanding cast.
Mm-hmm.
Lots
Incredible
of big names
cast.
in this.
My God.
Indeed. Yeah. It's also, of course, other than all the award nominations and the award wins, it's got pretty high ratings as well, which I think, as I mentioned before, don't necessarily go hand in hand. Like when you start looking at award shows or movies that are taking like prizes at award shows, usually the critic score is really high and the fan score is really low, or whatever. Probably due to boredom. For a lot
your
of
average
those
family
movies.
doesn't want to go watch Phantom Thread,
right?
That's definitely more of a movie for the kind of person who goes and sits in the theater by themselves and just escapes.
Yeah, you can just kind of zone out and watch your movie.
Right. It's not a popcorn movie.
Right. And neither is this, but I do feel like this one kind of walked the line of that.
I felt this was very entertaining.
Yeah.
Had some 12 Angry Men kind of feeling to it.
Okay, yeah.
But kind of a modern day take on it. Incredible cast. A lot of courtroom drama. A lot of the group sitting outside of the courtroom discussing things.
Right, exactly.
But, man, I loved this. What about you guys? I was really blown away. I thought I would enjoy it. Had no idea how much I'd like it.
Yeah, I thought I was going to like it all right, but I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I was going to. So I guess that's good. Movie did what it was supposed to, and again, I think that has to do with the acting and also the writing, especially.
Yeah, it's good across the board, but Sacha Baron Cohen and what is it, Eddie Redmayne?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how you say his name?
Yep.
Yeah.
Those two were phenomenal. Just incredible.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
They
Mark
did
Rylance
such a good
wasn't
job.
bad either.
No, but not quite as compelling of a part, I guess. He was a little more quiet. It's kind of hard to know with movies like this that are based on historical events, right? But spoilers, kind of. But I thought it was really interesting to see, since we've done Judas and the Black Messiah, I thought it was really interesting to see how this ties in with Fred Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So sort of just another piece on the same timeline that maybe other people like me that weren't alive during this kind of stuff didn't realize coincided the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I definitely thought Joseph Gordon-Levitt did a good job.
Oh, yeah.
Because he walks such a fine line between being the scummy corporate kind of lawyer, but also just seeming like a decent human being underneath it.
Yeah.
He seemed more conflicted with what was happening to them than the guy that was with him.
His boss.
But not enough to protest it.
It reminded me somewhat of what you're saying earlier, Judah and the Black Messiah, in the way that you had that government body that was conflicted. This went more the way I was hoping it would. The other movie, at least. But
yes, not quite the same ending.
Yeah, the FBI agent go full on jerk mode was not my favorite thing to see in the other movie, but probably more common the case in real life. And both of them were based off historical events, so I don't get to choose that. But
right.
Yeah, I really loved this movie. I thought it was so wonderful. And the way that it tied into, like you said, the other movie that we've watched recently, it felt like I was, because I watched it so recently, I felt like I was more connected to what was the events and the kind of mindset that was going on, because this takes place in Washington, I'm guessing.
Chicago.
Is the trial in Chicago?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, it's even in the same city.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think they did a good job of just being entirely infuriating.
What do you mean?
Every single thing that happened in that courtroom,
oh my God,
was annoying and upsetting. Yeah. There was really never a vindicated moment. You almost get it with Michael Keaton as the former Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
His testimony is everything you want. And then the judge just essentially dismisses it.
Yeah.
He prevents the jury from hearing it, which is
Frank Langella is so good at that, being the bad guy.
Yeah.
He was so hateable.
Indeed.
Which is good. I mean, that's a good quality. He really came across well, yes. I thought.
He portrayed a petulant child very well.
I thought for sure that it was going to be the government itself, the the new attorney general and the lawyers that were going to be the bad guys. And while they kind of were, it was absolutely the judge that was the main antagonist of the entire movie.
Yep, exactly.
Yes, this was such a good illustration of literally the entire system being against them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got the government on one side, which is clearly not in their favor, and then you have the judge who's just absolutely facilitating every bit of this.
Judge Julius Hoffman.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they had all kinds of stuff. Fake jury tampering by them doing the jury tampering.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just they had everybody and their mother was an undercover agent.
Mm-hmm.
I love that too. I love
how they show you every one of them
when he's talking. He's doing his when
Rennie's doing his
Rennie's doing his bit.
Oh, no, that's Abby. Sorry.
No, it is Abby. Yeah.
When Abby was doing his stand-up about.
And he goes, I like to call this part of the trial with friends like this. Absolutely. With friends like this, who needs enemies?
Right.
Because every one of them was an undercover cop that just came up to throw him under the bus when it's really, circumstantial, really is kind of what they had, except for the one. I guess the one lady detective. Was she a detective?
Yes, the undercover.
Was she FBI? I don't remember what she was.
FBI.
Anyway, she FBI. Okay. Who was there for kind of the whole thing and was willing to even tell the truth.
Agent Daphne O'Connor, played by Caitlin Fitzgerald.
Yeah, that's the one. But yeah, no, I I really thought that was great. With friends like I like to call this part with friends like this.
And even
fair enough.
The joke he made about this is the story of how we led 800 undercover cops in a march.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But I think for me, one of my favorite parts of this movie was the way that they spliced in old footage, actual footage
like
from what happened, with the sort of reenactment they were currently doing. I feel like that brought such a different level of realism to it, because a lot of times you see movies and you're like, oh, this is just overly dramatized for film. But it really wasn't. It portrayed genuine events that happened, and maybe some of the dialogue and those sorts of things are...
Well, yeah, definitely the dialogue
are definitely over dramatized, but it felt more like a genuine picture with that footage put in there.
Right. Yeah.
Grounded it.
Yeah. It made it a little more gritty as well, right? You get to see the actual situations, some of the actual situations that happened. It's not just, nice. All right, you guys stand over here and you guys stand over here. And then when we say action, just pretend like you're angry. Right. That kind of, it wasn't like that at all. When they show the real clips, you go, oh.
It is one of those
vitriol there.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely one of those great moments where they show you reality and how it's kind of worse than the movie you're watching.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
That was something that they did at the end of Black Klansman as well. When they showed the KKK marches that were in current time.
Yeah.
And it just made the whole movie feel that much worse.
Yeah.
And I do want to say that was one thing I noticed thinking about whenever I was watching this movie, the Trial of the Chicago 7, was that it reminded me of some kind of parallels to modern day, because I wasn't alive in the 60s or 70s, and there's so much of the rhetoric that goes around today that like our country's on the verge of collapse and everything is terrible and we've never been so divided. Right. And it's like, just go look back 30, 40 years. There was just as much divide, just on the verge of collapse as we were. And like, we still had the 80s and the 90s. Maybe we got some good decades left. Give it a few years.
It's a cycle, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. History repeats itself, so they say.
Those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they also say that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the more significant pieces also was the handling of Bobby Seale in general.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
He repeatedly said he did not have a lawyer, and they just went ahead with it.
That was so painful.
Yeah.
I was really concerned that they were going to have him bound and gagged the whole trial, and because I didn't know the events before this. And I was like, I don't know if I want to watch a movie with him bound and gagged for that long. Like, that would just really be uncomfortable for me to watch.
No, and I think that was interesting to see the way the judge had him dealt with accordingly. Because I don't know that they would have done that to any of the others. I don't think that it's
not the same way.
I don't think that they would have taken Tom out and beaten him and tied him to the chair when they brought him back.
Right.
But yes, that was one of the only sort of redeeming moments, I guess, for me with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character.
Yeah.
What was his name? With Richard. Is that he did at that point stop and say, no, hold on, we can't do this. Because I had a very negative opinion when he had come in seemingly as a good human being and just let it go on with one person having no representation.
Right. That was the point where you're like, oh, that didn't feel good.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
because they played him as sympathetic in the very beginning when he's talking to the Attorney General.
Yeah, I don't know if sympathetic is the term I'd use. He was very aware of the situation, which I don't know that everyone else was. He he had a job to do. He didn't want to do the job, but I don't think that it was because
I don't think it was because he thought he couldn't win.
I don't necessarily think because I don't think it was because he didn't think he could win. I think it was because this was going to be the stage that the world viewed the entire political situation from.
Right.
And so even if you win, there's no winning, right? You can't win properly. Even if you win the case,
well, there was
still going to be very negative.
There was no way not to win that case for him. Right, for Richard Schultz. There wasn't any way to lose that case because you have a selected jury specifically for your cause, and you have the judge in your pocket. Uh-huh. So if you don't win or you protest too much, that's very standalone, which I would think would be very difficult, especially at his age.
It's a thing that ends careers or ruins them.
Yeah. No, it was gift wrapped and put in his lap. But he also knew that would be the case. He knew those would be the tactics. He knew that things would be shown that don't show the U.S. government in a shining light.
Right. The world is watching.
Yeah. And so I don't think he was, prepared or ready for that to be the thing. He knew it was going to happen because this is, here's your job. This is what you have to do. Do you want your job? Okay, here's my job. I like my job. So yeah, it was one of those things where I didn't necessarily like him, but I understood him. And then as time goes on, you just you start to dislike him more and more. Every time he's questioning somebody, you're like, "Ooh, I hate you just a little bit more." But yes, when he did declare the mistrial for
Bobby
Seale,
yeah,
that was kind of the moment you're like, okay, so you're not just a horrible person. Like, there is a line that you're like, okay, this has crossed the line. Right. This is more than I'm comfortable with. And I know that everybody is watching this.
I think he was passively bad, not actively bad, which doesn't make it any better.
I think that is definitely better. I think passively bad is loads better than actively bad. I mean, not stopping somebody from dying is not cool, bro. Killing somebody, really, really not cool. So
right, but it's not exactly not letting someone die. It's more.
And just for the heads up of the users or listeners, that was, by the way, super understated. It's terrible to do either, but there's still magnitudes of difference between the two. I don't want people to think that my response to letting somebody die is not cool, bro.
Fair enough.
So fake for the podcast.
Wait, you said I'm fake for the podcast?
Just
I'm
kidding.
Fake in real life.
Yeah, that's accurate. But I think it is more passively sitting there letting the government railroad these people in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little worse than just not stopping something. It's knowing something really bad's happening.
Well, yeah, lawyers, scum of the earth. So
right,
we know. Even lawyers know.
I felt like his arguments were, while they were definitely antagonistic to the protagonists of the movie, I felt like they were pretty standard lawyer stuff. It wasn't super sleazy.
No.
The prosecution's not going to ask to get the full story. They're going to ask for the parts of the story that they want to tell, and then it's the defense's job to do the same.
Yeah.
And so I felt like the lawyering was good and interesting. It was the judge that sent me off the deep end every time.
Yes, this wasn't as bad as, oh darn, I forgot the name. The John Grisham movie where they're fighting the big insurance company. But those lawyers played by some dirty tactics, and these guys didn't.
Yes, they did.
Well, I mean, they did with the jury tampering, but it wasn't the same nasty questioning to reach their own end. They had the judge.
I also don't know that the lawyers were involved in that.
Yeah, you
could. I promise you, they didn't set up the judge. That was the attorney general or somebody in the Justice Department or something like that.
You can hope not.
Yes.
Right.
We'll just say that.
The outgoing attorney general offended everyone.
The fact of the matter is that they had the entire government gunning for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody was against them.
Institutional power.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happens when you try to peacefully protest without a permit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what happens when you protest.
Yeah. But politics aside, this was a very entertaining movie.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it, and I think it deserves some more nominations coming up here.
I think it
for the
deserves
Oscars.
Some statues.
Yeah.
Yes, and I wanted to go ahead and watch it because I had a feeling it might get some Oscar nods.
We will see.
As we head into awards season, kind of.
Any potential Oscar movies we can watch to limit the crunch that we have to go through, I'm down for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Every
fair.
year, I'm like, we watched a lot of the things that are Oscar worthy, and then there's like 13 movies we have to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh gosh.
Yes, it's easy to see things nominated for many categories except Best Picture for some reason.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we've covered it pretty well. Do you guys want to go ahead and get into favorite scenes?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. This one was a tough one for me. So I'm not going to go first. How about Daniel?
Sure.
I'm kind of like still weighing my options in my head, and yeah. Let's go Daniel.
My favorite scene was when they got the audio recording from the whatever that was.
If blood's gonna flow, let it flow all over the city.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was powerful.
And doing the fake cross-examining.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the way they did that. Put me on the stand. I'm going to be the one that can, make us look good. Because that was really, that was the biggest issue, right? Is that you have, I say petulant child when I was talking about the judge, because, anything that doesn't conform to his belief gets tossed out, right? I don't, la. It doesn't exist in my courtroom. But you also had all of the seven being pretty much the same way, except for Tom Hayden, which is Eddie Redmayne's character, who I guess has a respect for the system. He doesn't believe in what the system's doing, but respects how the system works, right?
And
those are not the same thing. They're two completely different animals.
Wanted to change the system from the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so that was kind of his whole thing, was that, just put me on the stand and I'll make us look good. And then they got the audio tape, and it was, I can still do it. And, they're firing back and forth at each other, questions and answers during their cross-examination. And it's the audio is damning.
Very.
It really is. And he argues, and he makes good points, but you still can't overcome the audio until you get to the very last second, after it's done, after they're done arguing. And he said, "Hour." And it took me a second. I was like, "Hour what? What are you talking about?"
Yeah, I was lost too.
Yeah. But that's kind of when Abby hops in there and explains that he's got a habit of doing this. I guess in his writing and in his speeches. And in the moment could have very easily left, if it's going to be our blood running through the streets, then
if our blood is going to flow, then let it flow all over the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I think his relationship with Abby was really great. That was one of my favorite sort of bonds, I guess you could call it, in the movie, because that's the first moment I think Tom realizes Abby actually respects him.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope anyway. Everybody knows Abby's smart. You might not necessarily go about everything in a smart way, but yeah, at that moment you go, aha.
Yep.
They're fighting for the same cause. They go about it a different manner. They don't necessarily agree with each other's methods, but they do respect each other.
Yeah.
And boy, they should, because they're going to be doing time together.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Yes. I don't think they realized what they had in common.
Right. But I think that moment really kind of opened that up. But it also gave you more insight into really what he was trying to say and really what their stance was. Because again, like I said, that audio was pretty damning. It was, oh, you did come here to start a riot, which is not, one audio clip can't be the entire summation of you set out to do this. That's not, that's not reality. But that's how it would have been perceived.
It did sound like he encouraged them to go attack cops in the city.
Right. But to say that and then right. But it's like, it's one thing for you to say something like that. And then it's another thing for it to be like, you say something like that, then the whole world catches on fire. Right. They did have a little confrontation after that, but it wasn't like, I guess it wasn't like The Hill.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't know.
But it's complicated.
It's a good choice.
It is.
It's a good choice, though. It's a good moment. You also get to see that whole stage moment.
Yeah.
Which gave you more context of what actually happened, because they spend a surprisingly little amount of time recreating the events.
Right. Or even how they ended up in jail.
Right. Yes. It's definitely
I thought
more
they
about
just
the
walked around and randomly, air quotes, rounded up some people, but no, they got them all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's mine.
Good choice.
Good one.
I'm going to go second because I think mine's going to be kind of short. It was not a very long scene. It's very specific, but it was when Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, what's his name?
Richard Schultz.
Yeah. Is interviewing, or I guess examining Abby on the witness stand.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was the way that lawyer's questions were geared to try to elicit an answer. And of course, Abby, being the smartass that he is, dancing around the questions and giving responses that he thinks are funny most of the time. But you can see the seriousness and the intelligence underneath the jokes. And it was after you had already kind of seen that Abby is no dummy, but at the same time, the way that they framed that interview, or I guess it's not really called an interview, examination, I guess.
Yeah.
I found interesting because they usually ended entire conversations. That one ended with almost a punchline, not a joke though.
Right.
I'm sorry. Give me a minute. I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
Right.
Yes.
I love the way that it was so perfect because it kind of, I'm a sucker for the thing that I find encapsulates the movie. And that is what really hit home for me. I loved that scene. It was incredibly short, but it was your most challenging protagonist and your most conflicted antagonist going head to head.
Right.
Yeah.
And exactly.
I thought that it was really well done and really incredibly acted and very short, but incredibly important for the overall feel of the movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that short scene gave us some of the best and most relatable quotes out of the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because his whole bit about,
do you have contempt for your government?
Right. When he said, I love my country, but the contempt I have for my government is nothing compared to the contempt my government has for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That definitely was the essence of this movie.
Right. Loved it. That's mine.
Nice. Yeah. Very good choice.
That was a very good one.
Thank you. Well, what about you, Rachel?
Mine is kind of short as well, but I think it's one of the final scenes in the courtroom where the judge is basically telling Tom that if you give me a short statement of what I want to hear, we might look favorably on you.
Yeah.
Which is just so insulting and frustrating and not the point of why we're here. And so instead of kowtowing, which is what you sort of expect Tom is going to do, he stands up and he doesn't really have anything to say, but then he starts reading the names of all the soldiers killed.
Yeah.
And wow, that's an incredibly long list. And I bet that took
4,000 plus names to read.
I'm sure that took a very long time, but it was also really interesting to see the people that stood in solidarity and the people that got up and left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was another moment where you see Richard Schultz stand up because, like he says, it's respect for the fallen.
Yeah.
You can hate the people, you can dislike or hate the people on the other side of the bench from you all day long, but what kind of American doesn't pay respects to
the people that have died in order to serve their country? Yeah, that's
even if you don't agree with why they went over there.
Right. Yeah. Agree or disagree with the war,
these are the
trial.
Guys in the front lines. These are people's children. They're not the people sending them.
Right.
Yes.
Who walks out on that? That's regardless. I'm like, wow.
Regardless of all the rest of that, the least you can do is show respect for the people that have died.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really good. And Rennie especially had spent so much of the movie reminding them that that's what it was about. For him, for he and Tom's group versus the others' groups. But I think that was, again, kind of their main purpose was to draw attention to the most important thing. So he used his platform to bring the focus back where it should have been.
Right.
The thing that got me was he asked the judge to repeat it again. And I almost thought he was waiting to give him a second opportunity to say, if found guilty. And neither time he does.
Right.
Both times, it's under the assumption that they're already guilty from the quote unquote.
So they are.
Impartial. What's that?
Right.
They already are guilty.
They are. It's just the sentencing portion.
Was that the sentencing portion?
Yeah.
I thought that they hadn't.
Yes.
They had not determined whether they were guilty or not at that point.
No, they had already been placed under custody. That's why they all came in jumpsuits.
Yeah, his looking favorably was probably a gentler sentence.
Gotcha. But that would be all it would be.
Right. And at that point, I think it was a matter of, well, screw this.
Yeah.
Screw this trial.
We're guilty for no real reason. So,
well, yeah, this trial's done with. As mad as it makes you at that point. Once you had Michael Keaton's character, Ramsey Clark, the
once Ramsey's
AG,
thrown out.
Once he was there and agreed to be their witness and actually called members of the State Department or something like that to come witness him, tell them yes, so come testify. Yep. I was like, oh yeah. None of this really matters now. Like, this is for history books and the media, because the appeals is where that's going to happen.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and that's what got him out, was the appeals court.
Yep. Good choice.
That sentenced to 6 years, I think.
Sentenced to 5.
Was it 5?
Yeah, each one of them got 5 years each.
I don't remember.
And then they ended up it got declined to prosecute in the appeals, I think is what it was.
Yeah, I think they declared it a mistrial and declined to go through trial again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To retry. That's what I was looking for.
Well, the first one took a year.
Yes.
So that administration was probably out by the time they got around to the appeals court again.
Yep.
Well, that was Nixon's first term. Right? It was like the first year of Nixon's first term. So
I don't know, but the judge was...
Oh, the judge was, yeah.
Did say like 67% or 87% found him to be unfit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And 67%, I'm pretty sure. Anyway.
That's funny. I think it was 78, but whatever.
Nobody knows. We don't know.
It's impossible to ever determine this. We just have to agree to disagree. There's no place that we could go and look this up or potentially find out.
We just toss numbers around.
The internet doesn't exist. Replay on Netflix isn't a thing.
Nobody will ever mention this in the comments.
Never know.
And that's true because nobody ever writes in our comments. So
that is true. That is true.
All right. Well, then I think that about wraps it up for the trial of the Chicago 7.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you enjoyed our coverage of it. If you did, make sure you go online and like and subscribe. And please join us next time on Were You Not Entertained?